Hi, everybody. How are you today? I am Kelly Coyle-Crivelli from Penguin Random House Library Marketing. Our LibraryCon event that we do every summer is one of our favorite events of the entire year. We are sad that it is 2 years in a row that we're virtual, but we are still so excited to have you join us today. We are so excited to talk about graphic novels. We feel like it would not be summer if we were not here with you to talk about a bunch of wonderful graphic novels that we have coming up that we've already had out, and just the genre in general. So we really are happy that you are here today. We have a wonderful lineup for you today, so I'm not going to introduce myself too much longer. I'm going to let our authors and creators talk for themselves, but I just want to give you a quick rundown of who we have today. We have Kim Dwinell, the author of Surfside Girls, Jarod Rosello, Red Panda and Moon Bear, 1 and 2. Daniel Jose Older, Star Wars, The High Republic, Republic Adventures. And we are so excited today to bring you Stan and Julie Sakai. So hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Just so you all know, most of our audience today is filled with librarians. A lot of our librarians have had a very rough year, some of which are just reopening their libraries now. So for us to be able to bring this to them today is a really, really big treat for us, and we are so happy that you were able to join us. We have been through this year where librarians have really, really been totally engaged with our virtual events. So we know that they are really staying engaged with the books and the titles coming out, and with the audiences and with the authors and the creators. And so this is really a nice event for us to have today. And we are just ready to talk about all your books. So I am going to start off today with Stan and Julie Sakai. Thank you so much for being with us today. We hope that you will talk to us. You really don't need an introduction, but we hope you will talk to us about your new project, what you've been doing. We know that you are involved in this project together, which I can't help but ask if it has something to do with the fact that you've been stuck home together all year, but we'll hope you will talk to us about that today. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
I'm Stan Sakai. This is my lovely and very talented wife, Julie. I have been doing graphic novels for about 35 years or so, and since this is a library Zoom meeting, my character or my series, Usagi Jimbo, has received a number of library awards, such as the American Library Association Award, a few Young Adult Library Services Award. But this new project, Chibi Usagi, is a collaboration between myself and Julie here. Julie's style has been mainly Chibi. She's been illustrating for how long?
About 80 years.
About 35 years, about the same as I have. And the Chibi style is naturally hers. And so we wanted to work on something for a younger audience. And this book came about. We both worked on the story, both worked on the artwork. Julie did the wonderful lettering, and Julie's daughter, Emmy, did the coloring. So it's like a family effort. So that was great.
And I think because we're both interested in the Japanese culture, that it's a very educational book as well, and it's fun. And what I really love to bring to the readers is having the reader create for themselves. And so I love that our book has pictures without words sometimes, and just allows the person to create their own world. And after they read the book, they can go and play act and use their imagination, because I think that's where ideas come from when they grow up, is sparking their imagination as a child. So
that's great. Thank you. And I love the fact that you've made this for a younger audience. I think that's great. I love that you're sneaking in the educational aspect of it. I think that's the best way to get kids to read, is to entertain them, pique their creativity, and also teach them things at the same time. So
exactly.
This is so exciting that you have done this for middle grade readers, especially since they are now gravitating toward this genre more than ever. So this is really exciting. And I know that you all probably feel the same way. So thank you. We will come back to you with some questions in a little bit. Next up is Daniel. Daniel, if you'll talk to us about Star Wars, a little known property, and the High Republic Adventures. We are excited to hear from you today.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. I just want to say it's such an honor to be on a panel with Mr. Sakai. I've read your books my whole life. It's really amazing to be here with you. So thank you both for being here. I can't wait to read the book. It sounds so cool. But Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures, this is like a dream come true project for me. I've been a Star Wars fan my entire life. I've also been a comic book fan my entire life. So to be able to do the two together is incredible. The High Republic as a initiative is this gigantic idea of basically telling a whole new era of galactic history, where we're going 200 years before the Skywalker saga and opening up all these new doors of what it was like in the golden era of the Jedi. And what's so cool about that, besides the fact that we don't have to worry about everybody dying in Order 66, the way most Star Wars stories horribly end, is that we get to really look at the Jedi Order in so many complicated and interesting ways, particularly with High Republic Adventures, through what the young people are going through. So we meet different Padawans, including Lula Talisola and her friends Court and Farzala, and they're traveling the galaxy with Master Yoda, the famous Master Yoda, having adventures, getting into trouble, being in danger, and they meet a young Force-sensitive, not Jedi, named Zine, who has grown up in a group of people that don't like the Force and don't think you should use the Force at all, and in fact, hate the Jedi. So she suppressed the Force her whole life, and suddenly she comes face to face with these Padawans, with these young Jedi, and their paths cross. And she's like, wait, this is a power that I have that I can actually use for the better of the galaxy. And so we really come at this turning point, both in galactic history and for these young people. So it's really exciting to be able to write this series. The trade paperback comes out in November, and I'm just living my best life, being able to write these Star Wars stories in a whole new era. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I think it's probably a lot of pressure with Star Wars series. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of, you've got your core audience that's going to fact check every single thing you wrote and be ready to. I love it.
Of course.
But what a fun project to take on. So thank you for being here today. So next up, we're going to talk to Jarod. If I say your last name wrong, is it Rosello?
Fine. Yeah, you can say Rosello or Rosello if you're feeling brave.
Okay. Jarod is the author of Red Panda and Moon Bear. The second book is coming out soon, and we're so happy to have you here today. If you could just talk about your new book.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, I'm the creator of Red Panda and Moon Bear. The first volume came out in 2019. The second one comes out in January 22, so just a few months away. It's about these two second-generation Cuban-American siblings who've got these magic hoodies and magic crystals, and they sort of defend their neighborhood against monsters and solve mysteries. It takes place in a sort of this fictional city called Martí, which is sort of a hybrid of like Miami and Tampa and a little bit of Havana. And it's a story about these kids who are not between cultures, but living fully in two cultures and the magic that comes from that space between. And so I wanted to create a book series that sort of celebrated and materialized that sort of magical liminal space in between. And so imbued these kids with the sort of promise of the generations that came before them, and then it materializes in actual magical ways in the world. And so
oh, thank you. That is a wonderful definition of that. And I love the that they're defenders of the community together, and they work so well together there. It's fun.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. I think and Kim, you're coming up next too, and I think your books are the same way. Any way you can tie friendship into and those kinds of tricky relationships into books for young readers to show the problems that arise and the disagreements and all that stuff is a great way to show kids how to resolve some problems. So last up, Kim, if you will, Kim Dwinell, if you will introduce yourself. She has a new Surfside Girls issue coming out, and this one is actually a nonfiction take on it, but maybe you could just talk about the series in general and the difference with this one. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm Kim Dwinell once again. And yes, I've written 2 graphic novels. This is the first, Surfside Girls, The Secret of Danger Point, and the second, this is The Mystery at the Old Rancho. And they're mysteries. They're, you know, they're fiction mysteries with Sam and Jade, like you said, these best friend girls, 12-year-olds, solving mysteries in their sleepy beach town, with a little bit of paranormal going on. But as actually, from the beginning, as I was writing this, I always thought it would be nice to have like a field guide attached to this. And initially what I thought it might be would be like how to surf. So maybe kids are reading this and they're like, man, being out there in the ocean, feeling the board take your wave, all that power behind you, like, how do you even do that? And I thought, how cool would it be to write a guide for that? And as I took my spiral bound notebook and I started putting sticky notes in, like, oh, you know, which wetsuit to wear, and do you want a longboard or a shortboard, or, you know, how to wax your board, and then how to read a tide chart. And well, shoot, what makes a tide? You know, like, why are there tides? Like, I can't just say read your tide chart. And it sort of morphed into this science of surfing, like all of this science that's attached to your experience in the ocean, or an experience you'd like to have in the ocean. And to be honest, I was sort of the reluctant. I was in love with science in high school. I loved biology and I loved physics, but I am not the math doer. I really was not the mathy kid. And I felt like I couldn't have science because of that fact. And what I've come to realize as an adult, as like the tail of my board is going up and I'm feeling like the right moment to pop onto that wave that's come across the Pacific from 3,000 miles away. Like, all of that is science, and I'm science, and the world is science, and I can access that from a different path that doesn't include statistics or calculus, and that's okay. And so, you know, I was fortunate that I'm at a university. I teach animation at Cal State Long Beach, and we have the Shark Lab, and Dr. Chris Lowe at the Shark Lab helped check my science and make sure. And I'm kind of a science junkie, so it was neat to, you know, to kind of be working with him on ocean life and the things that we have right here in our Southern California.
That is really fun. I feel like kids nowadays, I feel that they are just, maybe it's just me, but I feel like maybe they just have more access to information. I feel like they are never full. They're never done asking questions, or I feel like I just did something. I never asked all the questions they asked. So I'm happy that the books for kids nowadays are giving them more of the information. And Julie, you said something earlier about when you do your drawings that you like to sometimes leave the space for the reader or for the child to kind of figure out what they think that means. And I think that is another really great way to show respect for a younger audience. And I will say that even though your books are written for younger audiences, I think graphic novel fans read all ages. So, you know, I think it's more suitable for a younger audience, but I don't think that this won't mean adults won't really appreciate these and love these novels as well. But Julie, maybe you guys can talk a little bit more together, Stan and Julie, about how you, I think, and a lot of times when we talk to graphic novelists, the writers and the illustrators and the colorists, they don't ever meet each other. They send their works out into the ether, and then they get back, you know, drawings like a couple months later. But you, with the collaboration and working so closely together, do you think that made it harder or easier? Like, how do you think that worked?
I think it was wonderful. It was an immediate reaction, and I love that we were able to input and critique and just have different eyes on the property, and it was delightful.
And this is an instance where all the creators actually live together. So yeah, good and bad, but mostly good. You had said about drawing without words, telling stories without words. This is a piece that Julie and I worked together, we collaborated on. And the entire story begins with the 3 main characters catching unagi eels, and they use a traditional Japanese unagi trap, and from there the story goes on. But yeah, it's a real collaboration between 3 people, and it was great.
Oh, I love that. I do. I think that's great. And I think that would make it easier. I know that even sometimes when you talk to children's book writers, they don't, I remember talking to one and she said that she had envisioned her main character as an elephant and the illustrator made it a giraffe. And so it's just interesting to see that most of the time as graphic novel writers, you are letting go and letting somebody else interpret it. So I love the fact that you two were able to work so closely on it together. And did you have to bring this property to a younger audience? Like, how much did you have a hard time finding the balance of what the younger audience was going to be able to process, or was that kind of an easier job than you thought it would be?
I thought it was fairly easy.
Yeah, I think we think like children, so it was easier. And I have to say, Stan's like a legend in his industry, and he's so humble and open and teachable, and he accepts what we say, and we it was just, he taught us so much just by being open. And we don't, we're really not, this is my first book, so he was very patient.
Well,
I kept thinking the fact that you did this during the pandemic, I thought, imagine being stuck in a house with Stan Sakai and how to do it.
Well, I would rough out some pages in pencil and give it to Julie and she said, okay, now let me correct it. And she did. It turned out better.
I love it.
The thing is, he's so exact and precise, and he's great with his ruler and just everything. And I'm left-handed and right-brained, and I'm just all over the place. So those ruler lines just freak me out. So I would erase everything and start over.
I love that. Oh, that is what a wonderful collaboration. What a wonderful way to spend the year, no matter what. I think that's great. And Daniel, so when you were doing your project, it's Star Wars. So does that bring a level of intensity? You kind of assume that the artwork is going to be a certain way. Does it make it worse, or does it make it easier to have more information than you need? Do you know what I mean?
Totally. It is a challenge. And let me shout out my artist, Harvey Tolibao, because he is incredible. He lives in the Philippines, and the first thing we did was Skype and just hang out and talk and learn about each other and each other's lives. And I asked him back then, what are things that you love to draw so that I can slide those in there for you? And he was like, no, literally everything. And I was like, no, nobody loves to draw everything. It turns out he really does. You can tell that he's so passionate about everything that he throws himself into, and because there'll be really funny moments and there'll be really, really scary moments, and whole armies, of creatures with gas masks and spaceships and everything else. And he just puts so much detail into it. And that's one of the things I really love about working with him. And I think that's one of the things that we all kind of love about Star Wars, is the attention to detail is miraculous. The way that the spaceships are dusty and beat up and rusted out and everything else, and just it feels so lived in, And so that's really where he comes from. And the challenge is then, yes, it has to link up correctly, not just with the larger Star Wars galaxy far, far away, but also with that particular era that we're writing in, which is a brand new era. So you can't just jump online and find references. We really have to get it from Lucasfilm and everything else, which is, on the other hand, really, really cool, because Lucasfilm is great for going into the archives and being like, oh, here's a creature we never used. Do y'all want to use that? Yes, we absolutely do. A Star Wars creature that no one's ever used yet? We'll take it. So we got to name it, we got to do all that cool stuff. And that's really one of the great joys of it. It is hard, the collaborative aspect, but that's always true, with I think especially graphic novel work, and we have a great example right here. But even if you're working on your own, there's a sense that you're collaborating with yourself on a certain level. And it's been really, really fun to work both on a team of writers to map out the whole era of the time period, and then just with Harvey, with Rebecca Nolte, who does the colors, Jake M. Wood, who does the lettering. It's just been such a fun process.
I have to say, every time I do a graphic novel panel, I am so totally impressed with how much work and all the different people that add to the details of a graphic novel. I will say, when I was looking over all the books collectively for this panel, I thought, wow, these kids are so lucky. These books are all awesome. They're beautiful, and they're fun, and there's so much in them, and this is just really fun. I'm excited. And I think writing for Star Wars would be so intimidating. So I'm glad that you went in it with confidence. I think that's great.
It's mostly really fun. There are moments, of course, when it's like, you know, there are lots of people that know more about Star Wars than anyone else in the world. Yeah. And they'll tell you online about that. But
I was thinking that you're definitely going to get that.
It's a lot of love, though. There's a lot of love in the Star Wars community, and so I'll just focus on that.
Yeah, it's true. And there's a lot of love in the graphic novel community. So I think that all of you are are just adding to that. And I think that's wonderful. And so Jarod, this is your first book for young readers. You have crime fighting bandits together. And how important was the sense of the setting for you for a younger reader, and how did you do it? Because it's like that Miami vibe. Like, how'd you do it so making it like, there's a mystery, but you want to make it scary, but you don't want to make it too scary. How did you balance that?
Yeah, I tend to think of like setting as not just like where does this story take place, but like what's true in this world also. And so, so part of like so culture becomes a part of setting, history becomes a part of setting. Also, what can happen and what can't happen is a part of setting also. And so, so the larger setting conversation was one that was kind of constructed as I went a little bit. I feel like, when I started the story, I did one story, the first chapter of it. And then, as I moved into chapter 2, I challenged myself that every chapter would unfold the world a little bit more, so that rather than like setting up a big mystery early on that we would solve by the end of the book, each chapter would unfold something new about this world, about the world that the characters came from, about their own histories, about their own past. And I don't know, for me, learning about my own history and where I come from and where my family comes from has been a slow process of unfolding. And so I think I wanted a book that just continued to open up and change and gave me new opportunities to do that. And so all of that for me is about setting. It really is about thinking about the setting and what is magical in this place and what are the bounds of magic and what can happen or what can't. And kids are so easy to work with because they really are excited for possibility. They're not looking necessarily for like, oh, well, that's not, there's some, something illogical about that, right? Like they're excited, I think, when something is unexpected or seems as though it shouldn't exist, but there it is existing. And so in my day job, I work a lot with kids in and out of school. And so some of the stories and the setting was inspired by like reading stories with kids and making stories with kids. And, to me, feeling like, well, you can't tell, that's not, the story can't take that shape of thinking, well, why couldn't it, right? Why not? And so, so setting for me is not just about that location and getting the right buildings and the right architecture and the right colors, but also how can I what kind of lines can I draw that suggest that this building could sort of bend and move and shape, and that we could go into this alleyway and it could extend on for miles and miles if I need. So I needed every line to sort of feel like it was alive and magical in that way too.
Yeah, I think again, you did a great job with it. I think you had the respect for your reader and respect for your audience in that way. And I do think that all of your books, no matter what environment you're in, you're giving the reader not just a story, but a sense of place, that they're learning about the place at the same time. And the tradition of, in the sense of Star Wars, they're learning about the tradition of Star Wars. Like it's all, they're getting a lot more than they might think in the when they first start reading. I think they're just going to be immersed into those universes. And Kim, I am a beach person. So I'm not a surfer, but I've always been fascinated by it. I'm just a little bit of a wimp, but
Nah.
I've always been fascinated. I love the dynamic of your characters. 12-year-old girls, not easy to write a friendship of 12-year-old girls. There's always something. So how important to you was the nonfiction aspect of the book, without losing that sense of like kind of that teen drama that has been kind of carries you through even the the afterlife and all the other like the ghost in the last book and all that stuff. You didn't want to lose the drama, but the nonfiction.
No, and I tell you what, like, yes, those relationships were difficult in those days, but I feel like the strongest feelings, emotions, and friendships I had were in those middle grade years. There's something about like Jarod said, the world's opening and you're on the cusp of adulthood. You're starting to understand things about yourself and the world, and people are moving through that space at different rates. And so friendships get really dicey because this one's boy crazy and this one just wants to be with their parents. And this one thinks that that's too much for my world. And, so there's a lot of that going on. So that's what I try to play with my Sam and Jade. And yes, in this nonfiction, I definitely wanted to present all this information like, oh my gosh, I have a little, plush dolphin and I have a plush otter that we got at the aquariums. What's the cutest mammal in the ocean? So it's not just about, hi kids, there are otters and dolphins in the ocean. It's coming at it more like, no otters are cuter, no dolphins are cuter, shut up, no, you shut up. So I've kind of got that snarky banter that I try to weave through the book so that it feels like, and this was not easy to do. And let me back up by saying, thank God I had this project during the pandemic because I love the ocean. And I was on like the Monterey Bay Aquarium's live cam with their kelp forest and watching videos about bait balls and, and surfing videos for right angles. And it was really a comfortable place for me to go to during this pandemic to do all this research. And so that was really nice. And then learning this stuff off NASA and Sijinks and NOAA's websites, and then trying to morph it into 12-year-old girl speak. That was the goal here, so that it doesn't sound like adults telling you, how tides are made, but it's Sam like, no way, you're kidding me. No, seriously, it happens this way. And so that's the voice I tried to keep through the whole book. And then just to get it even lighter, little brother Pete is always the annoyance. And so he'll pop in with the really bad dad jokes to make everyone go, boo. So that's how I tried to present this information. I kept the pages light too, and I tried to keep a lot of white space because I thought some of this information is complicated. How tides, how our Earth rotates and the moon rotates and lining up with the sun. That's some crazy stuff. So I tried to draw it in a way that was very accessible.
That's great. Thank you. And it really does make you feel like you're right in Southern, like your books always make me feel like, oh, I am in Southern California. I really like that feeling. Not being from Southern California, I like to feel like I am there whenever I can. So just a general question I have for all of you, because as you guys were talking and as we were talking to you, Stan and Julie, about doing this project during the pandemic, I will say that I work in publishing. We have been, since the first day that we were told to go home from our office, we've still been able to talk about books every day. And, it's been a tiring year, but I do feel like people that work with books or people that are creative have had a leg up this year, because I feel like it's kind of saved people to have that creative outlet. I mean, that's how I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe if all of you could just say something about how, how it has changed you as a writer or as a creator, and maybe, if you can maybe put that in the context of, like, librarians weren't able to go to their shelves and they weren't allowed to be near their books for a long time. So what did you kind of learn about the importance of good literature and the publishing of a book during this past year, if you didn't already? I know everybody loves, obviously you're in this career for a reason, but what did you take away from this year the most what that has to do with your work? And Stan and Julie, did you want to go first?
Sure. Well, usually I work solo on Usagi Yojimbo. I'm the writer, the artist, lettering, everything. But and I've collaborated before but this is my biggest collaboration and my favorite collaboration. It was fun. As far as libraries, I love libraries. I remember going to the Waikiki Kapulu Library when I was a kid every Saturday, and Mrs. King, the librarian, was there. And meanwhile, I'd like to give a shout out to Hillary at the McCully Library. But yeah, this was great. Julie and I had a wonderful time working on this together, and Emmy too. So, anything to add?
No, no, I just really appreciate just the whole industry, because this is all new to me. And also our part-timers are all, their goal is to be a librarian, librarian. So we've always had books and the library as inspiration for my family. And so I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. And Stan, I know that the American Library Association loves you, and I know that the librarians are so excited that you are writing for the younger reader for this series, and we're so excited about this. We have heard stories this year, and maybe some of you can relate. There was a librarian that I know that was literally sneaking into the library and sneaking books, leaving them on the back porch for her, favorite patrons, because it was a problem for some people. They were really, in need. So we understand the passion and the appreciation for librarians. And I know that it's been a year, and unlike a TV show where people couldn't shoot a TV show, in some ways, writers could still write, and creators could still create, and illustrators could still illustrate. And I think that's great. So yeah. What about you, Daniel?
It's been an amazing year. It's been a really, really hard and really painful year in so many ways. But it has been art, and particularly the collaborative process that we've been speaking about, that really, I think, has sustained certainly myself, and I think so many of us. It's really come home to me how even when I'm writing a novel that's just me writing the novel, what a collaborative effort that is, and how helpful it is to remind myself of that, because otherwise we get caught up in ego and think we have to write the perfect book and everything else. And you can't write the perfect book. What you have to do is just write the best book you can that someone else can help you make into an even better book, and it's still not perfect. But I've been so blessed with so many smart editors, my agent, good friends, other writers who've been able to, read my stuff and I've read their stuff, and that is community, and community finds a way, people find a way, art finds a way. And that is a story we've seen play over and over throughout this whole really, really hard period. And especially with librarians. Here in New Orleans, the librarians have been going through it just like everywhere else, and they've really been struggling to do everything they can to keep the communities together, because that is such a part of who we are. Everywhere, and especially in this city where we've been through so much. So it's been really inspiring to see that, to see the librarians hard at work. I always get the newsletters about, which ones are opening and which ones are closing again, and what they have to do, and the cleansings and everything else. And it's intense, but they really are providing that incredible anchor for so many people to stay grounded, and to know that there's other folks out there struggling, and to tell stories and everything else. And that's what writing is all about. It's about stories, and it's about the community of story. And librarians are such a key part of that. And then lastly, I want to shout out one of my favorite library memories. When I was a kid, my mom got me obsessed with Watergate. Even though I was born in 1980, she's a political nerd, and she made a little political nerd in me, in her image. And we always just talked about Watergate. And she took me to the Watertown Library. That was where my elementary school was. I grew up in Boston, but we would go to the Watertown Library, and we would go through the microfiche and look at old papers from the 70s about the Watergate hearings. And I was fascinated. I was like 8. And I was like, this is amazing. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And, the library facilitated that moment between me and my mom, and the librarians there, I'm sure, watching and laughing and cracking up at this little 8-year-old, learning about Haldeman and Nixon and everything else. But without libraries, that moment never happens. It's a whole other thing. And whether they're doing the work online, which they've had to do for this period, or whether they're doing it face to face, they're providing the lifeblood of the community.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's true. And you're right. It is about community, and it is about the reading experience that brings people together. And I think that it's been such a tumultuous year, and you get people talking about books, and suddenly they forget everything else, and they're just talking about what they love to read, and what new artists they've discovered or whatever. So it's been a great industry to be in this year. I will say it has been a bit of a lifesaver. It really has, other than the technicalities of all these online WebEx platforms. Other than that, it's been wonderful. Right. And Jarod, what about you? What was your hometown library?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
What was you could tell your the how you felt about this year too, but I am curious what your home time library was too.
Yeah, you know, like in addition to being a writer, I'm a teacher also, and a parent of young kids, 9 and 5, and so I think this year's been challenging in many ways. And you know, like librarians, being a teacher means we're working sort of in the service of others. And if your school is closed, it doesn't mean that you don't still feel that obligation to work in the service of others, your students. And I think one of the things this year has taught me as a teacher, and a lesson that I've leaned over into my creative practice, is that you know, if you work against your structures, then you get defeated, right? If I plan my classroom or my library around being in person, and I can't be in person, then there's no school and no library. But if we decide that service is what we're here for, then we find ways to work with the structures around us rather than against them. And for me, when the pandemic began and kids were home and teaching was at home, my ability to write and to draw was just zero. I just, you know, I was tired and I was exhausted and I was beaten. And so I started to shift and decide, well, what can I do? If I can't do this project, what can I do right now? And so tiny moments, small stories, small drawings, right? Things like that, just to keep the sort of creative space moving and going. And so, you know, I had the benefit of seeing a lot of these conversations between librarians happen on Twitter about how do we do this? How do we keep this going? How do we keep this happening? And I think, you know, that larger space of how do we keep this going, this thing that we built for the people that we built it for, was a really, was a great lesson for me, even as a writer and as a creator, because we're making books for others also, and we don't want to just stop. And obviously we do it for ourselves, right? Those tiny moments where the world just disappears and we're there on our page, and in our, you know, that's when we sort of get rejuvenated a little bit, and then, you know, go back out and, you know, make lunch for everybody or whatever it is. But yeah, and so, you know, when my library reopened and would let us come and pick up books in the window, was sort of a savior for me, because 99% of the books I read are from my library. And so I would just go and get stacks of them. And I don't know, the access to books and having access to them feels, you know, I'd become accustomed to that. And so not having that access, you know, as a writer and as somebody who likes to read, it was really, it made me really anxious. And I felt like, oh, there's a book, and I wanted to read this book, and now I don't have it. And, you know, I don't know. So, you know, we're all readers. We all feel that same way. We just got to have books around us, even if we're never going to get to them or whatever it is. So, yeah.
That's true. Very true. And Kim, what about you? How did you, I know that you said that spending time with the, you know, doing your research online was helpful. And how else did you feel about the collaborative process being during this year?
Well, I don't know. I felt kind of on my own, quite honestly. Like, I'll be honest, you know what I was going to say is that, remember those early months, there was real fear. Like, it was really scary. And I was not so sure that we weren't going to be bringing in our dead kind of thing, you know, where the ambulance is rolling down the street picking up bodies. Like, I didn't know where we were going with this in those early months of COVID. And I felt that deep fear, and I would just dive into these pages and thought, like, this is my safe space. And what it reminded me of, you know, my dad was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot, and I went from Brooklyn to California to Japan to the deep south back to California before I was 10. So, like, untethered is a word that you can use to describe my childhood. And, you know, I have a good family, and my mom always utilized the library wherever we showed up. So one of the things I realized to do is that if I couldn't handle all this stuff out here, you know, I don't understand the slang, or, you know, this culture does this, or this culture doesn't do this, and I've already made mistakes, and I'm only 8, you know, and I don't know what I'm doing, I would go read a book in my room, because I knew that, like, I could focus down into that place and feel better. And so my mom always made it a point that, you know, Saturdays were library days, wherever we were, we would utilize our local libraries. And I kind of got that same sense here on the flip side, being the author illustrator and saying, like, all right, I recognize this feeling where I'm uncertain and things don't feel good and they don't feel solid. And I think it was Daniel that said grounded, they ground you. So I did, I really grounded myself into research in this book, and was kind of out here on my own with it for a very long time. So I hope someone can see the love in it, because I was really taking all those things that I love and stuffing it into this book as a way to keep myself afloat. No, no pun intended.
No, that makes sense. It really does make sense. And I think that you're not the only one. We've heard writers say, you know, that writing saved their life this year, reading saved their life this year. And so, you know, I can honestly tell you that we have gotten such amazing feedback. What I can say, you know, for graphic novels is that, you know, more kids, I think, are more people in general, but more kids are reading now than ever before. So we, you know, we have no choice but to look at the silver linings in what's happened this year. And I think that people are gravitating toward books more than they have ever. Not that they haven't, but just more than ever, especially graphic novels. The industry's booming. I like can't thank you enough as a mom, as a person who works in publishing, and as somebody that works with librarians all the time. Thank you all so much for not only for your hard work, but for also, you know, I always feel I have 3 sons, and I always felt annoyed when an author didn't have respect for a young reader. And I feel that all of you do in such a way that's like amazing. And you know, I think to bring kids into your worlds that you've written and created is just such an honor for them and for the parent and for the teacher and for the librarian to be able to share these books. So this is fun. The LibraryCon is one of our and Stan, I know you and I know most of you probably have been to an American Library Association conference before, but the graphic novel part of it is just so fun and so energetic, and the writers and creators are always just extra special to me. And so I am so happy that you guys did this with us today. And I can't thank you enough. I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to say before we end, but I told you to keep it to half an hour, but I could talk to you guys all day, but I know that then, you know, somebody will complain to me that we were too long. So yeah. And Stan, honestly, like what an honor to meet you. I don't feel like I was worthy of being able to interview you, but thank you for joining us today. And Julie, what a wonderful project together. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, good to know that you were able to be so creative together, and all of you. So Daniel, thank you. Kim, thank you. Jarod, thank you. That was really fun.
It was.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you.
Thanks so much.
Good luck with your books, and we'll talk soon. Take
All
care.
right. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye, you
Bye.
too. Well, we went over, but that's all right.
It was
Thank
fun.
you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Bye.